Hello and welcome to another episode of the Breaking Conservatarian broadcast with your host, your favorite conservatarian, Jeff Charles. And I'm here. I've got another great guest with you. But first, I'm going to call attention to my new background. It's awesome. But even more cooler, even better than my new background is the lovely AJ Swinson, who's joining us here today. And we're going to talk about a few things. And first, Miss Swinson, how you doing today?
I'm good, and I'm jealous of your backdrop. You're gonna have to make me one, honestly.
I just might. I won't even charge you for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm doing good. I'm here in sunny Florida. It's beautiful, it's hot, and you guys are freezing, so that makes me feel good.
Yeah, and I'm here in Austin, Texas, and it
Ah,
yesterday I think it was like 27 degrees in the morning, and it heated up a little bit during the day, but it stayed cold, which I love, by the way. Anybody who knows me knows I love cold weather, so
mm-mm.
I'm enjoying it. It's beautiful. It's nice and overcast right now.
I can do without it, but I'm happy you're happy.
All right, so we're going to talk about a few different things here. You're involved in a political action committee, which is pretty unique from the other ones that you usually see on the right. So we're going to get into that. But
Mhm.
first, I want to know what you think of this whole election fiasco. I mean,
Yeah.
the election happened on the 3rd, on November 3rd, and it
Hmm.
feels like it's still going on and on and on. What do you think? Was this thing stolen? Was it completely immaculate? Somewhere in between? What do you think is going on here?
Well, I think that the one thing that we here at the PAC, we were talking to different people in the Republican establishment, the donor class. We were talking to people and explaining to them the importance of making sure that there weren't any gaps in the way that voting was handled and in the way that the vote was counted. And so we were doing different things to have poll workers at different organizations or different locations. We unfortunately weren't able to raise enough money to really make a difference in the areas that needed it most. And it was unfortunate. Um, we talked about how if things are close, you're going to see ballots arrive that are going to make the difference. And in Michigan, Arizona, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, these are states that were within 1 to 3 percentage points, 1 to 4
Mhm.
percentage points of, and most of them were within 1 to 2 points of winning and losing. So when you have a race this tight, if you want to prevent any way that fraud could occur, you have to make sure that there's at least within the margin of error, there's enough of a gap. You can't have 5%, you can't have 50,000 ballots show up, but you can have, 2,000. Oh, this was found over here. These were found over,
Mhm.
and people are really hesitant to accuse the Democratic Party of cheating. Anybody who's been in politics for a long time, this happened. Acorn got called out while Barack Obama was running for office. I mean, this is not a oh, this is just a political talking point. No, this is a party that has been accused of cheating over multiple election cycles for years. This isn't a new allegation. This isn't something crazy Trumpers came up with. We unfortunately have some holes in our system that can be used against us. So, with all that said, the election is likely over and Joe Biden is likely the president. And unless an act of God happens in the Supreme Court, which I don't believe that it will, we have to start moving forward and planning for a Democrat presidency and possibly a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, depending on the way the Georgia runoff goes. I don't believe that Warnock will win. Ossoff might win. So if Ossoff wins, if we're supporting the PAC, New Journey PAC is supporting Purdue, we're supporting Loeffler. If they lose, Democrats will also have the Senate. If they win, I'm sorry, if the two we're supporting lose, Democrats will have the Senate. If one wins and one loses, it will be gridlock. and basically the vice president will have to be the deciding vote. So it's an interesting time for politics.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, you've been kind of looking at what's going on in Georgia. How do you think it's going to turn out? I mean, you said you don't think that Warnock is going to win. What
Mhm.
about you go a little bit more into depth into as to how you think that the Ossoff and Purdue race might turn out?
So I've been following polling, and I keep a board next to my desk of all the different things happening in politics right now. The last time I checked, and let me check my board, Purdue and Ossoff were neck and neck within 1 to 2%.
Hmm.
Loeffler and Warnock are within 5 to 6% of each other. Some polls showing her ahead by 5, some polls showing her down by 5. So, which is, who knows what to make of polling these days.
Yep.
At the same time, so basically, that race is going to be tighter. It's going to be basically who has the best ground game, who knocks on the most doors. Warnock has raised as much money as Loeffler is a millionaire. So she's been able to self fund her campaign. She has not raised that much money. He has raised equal to her, I believe about 20 million
Mm.
from liberal politicians, PACs, organizations, etc. Not from PACs, but from different organizations on the liberal side. It's just who will spend their money the best, who's building the best coalitions. It's going to be tight, and it's going to be races to watch.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I mean, I know in the general election for the
Mm-hmm.
Georgia Senate races, there was another Republican who ran, Doug Collins, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously he didn't, get enough votes. How do
Right.
you think that that's going to translate into this election? Because what I'm seeing, from what I'm seeing, it's very possible that those who voted for Doug Collins because they didn't like Purdue or Loeffler or Loeffler or whatever her name is, they
Mm-hmm.
might still go and vote for them in the runoff election. So
Right.
what's the likelihood of that happening, do you think?
Right. So that's the issue with the way that Georgia does it is the fact that she had a contender that she had to beat as well as a Democratic contender. So I think with that knowledge, she'll do fine. I'm surprised that the polling isn't showing her with more of a boost now that it's only her versus him.
Mhm.
So that's pretty surprising. But Georgia just went blue for the first time in a while.
That's true.
So you honestly you can't say, oh, it'll definitely go this way, it'll definitely go that way, because you just don't know these days.
Yeah, and I've been hearing from some people that I know that are in Georgia. They're seeing a lot of advertisements for Warnock and for Ossoff, and it sounds like the Democrats' ground game is there. I mean, we've got Stacey Abrams out
Mhm.
there, getting people galvanized.
Right.
How would you? I mean, and I don't know how much you can see into this, but how would you rate the ground game from the Republican side? I mean, are they out there pounding the pavement? Because what I'm hearing is that from the people I'm hearing, they're seeing a lot of advertisements from the Democrats, but not so much from the Republicans. But
And
that
that's
doesn't
the
necessarily
problem
mean
that
that they're
we
not
had in
doing.
the
Yeah.
general. You're right.
Mhm.
I mean, it's been different. The um, New Journey Pack has been creating advertising, and we're waiting to use ours at towards the end when we can really make a punch and make an effect right before, a couple weeks before the election. So it'll probably start next week. You'll start seeing our ads up everywhere. We've got people down there already who are working on the ground game, working with local politicians that are knocking on doors, and we are seeing a ground game. Our organization is partnering with some others, pulling people together. What is surprising to me is that it's not necessarily the Republican establishment that's doing it. It's
Mm.
packs like ours. So I'm not exactly sure what the GOP, where their mind is, what's going on. We were contacted to possibly work with them. I don't know what happened with that. We do have people down there that are working with them, so there is some ground game that's happening. I think that there needs to be more done digitally, which is why we're releasing ads in a week or so. Um,
Okay.
I think the issue is hitting people where they are. And so the typical person that you would think would be a Loeffler or a Purdue voter, they may be seeing Purdue and Loeffler all day, whereas some of the people that we know may be seeing Ossoff and Warnock all day. So a lot of this is broken down demographically, and you can have a completely
Okay.
different reality as to how the election went based on what demographic you're in. So that's why New Journey Pack is important, because people like us may not be seeing a lot of this. And we're making sure that they're seeing ads targeted towards them in a language that they understand.
Okay. Okay. So would it be fair to say what I'm hearing you say basically is that the ground game from the Republican side in Georgia is being done mainly by PACs like yours and other organizations, but not so much by the establishment Republican National Committee, or
Well,
would that be fair to
there's
say?
some
Or
partnership. I wish that there was more, but I'm
okay,
saying low packs like ours have really stepped up to kind of help pad some of the amount of workers who are out there.
okay,
Like there was some help that was needed, and so had this partnerships not been happening, there probably would be a lack. That's really what I'm trying to say. So
I
a
see.
lot of different
Okay.
packs and people are stepping in to kind of pad some of these organizations, and also to go into areas that normally wouldn't be getting attention um, from the Republican Party.
I see. Okay. Okay,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean that definitely makes me feel better. That I mean, at least as far as on the conservative side, they are working together to try to make sure that they retain control of the Senate. I mean, because I know you've heard about these Stop the Steal folks who basically want to give the Democrats the Senate
Right.
to punish the Republicans. How much of an influence are you seeing them have right now?
You know, fringe groups like that, they die out for a reason. And it's because they don't have a plan, and because they use the power that they have in ways that's not helpful to anyone. You know, I get being frustrated with the Republican Party 100%. If I were a Republican or a Democrat, I'd be frustrated right now, no matter what side I was on. The political parties, and I always stress this to people, they are nonprofit corporations. You know, they're not in the Constitution. They're entrenched in our democracy because we allow them to be, and because we've allowed them to accumulate so much power that to try to change the system now would be difficult. But we do have power and we should exercise that. The way that you exercise it, though, is not by not voting and allowing the other side to score a victory for the next, this is Senate, so this is 4 years.
Yeah.
That's not the way to exercise your power. If you wanted to exercise your power, there are a lot of different ways that we can discuss. Ways to do that, and ways to, regain control of the Republican Party, or place more people who are in agreement with you in the Republican Party. All those things are possible and would make far more sense. I don't think fringe groups like that are really, everyday Georgians understand that if the Senate flips this way, it's not about getting back at the Republican Party. This is going to affect us. So I don't think that that's really taking ground.
Okay. Okay. Good. And that's kind of what I'm seeing too. I mean, I know they had a boost in exposure for a while, but then it seems like everybody from the establishment to non-establishment people were kind of slapping that whole thing down because they understand the stakes here, right? I mean, if
Right.
if Biden has a Democratic Senate, then it's much easier for him to enact his agenda, which it doesn't seem like we're really paying much attention to Biden's agenda right now because we're so focused
Mhm.
on the presidential election, which is
Right.
going to put us behind in January. But it does mean that we still don't have an opportunity to catch up and see what he's trying to do. But if they have the Senate, then we're not really going to be able to do much about it. So I'm glad to hear that the conservative movement is making a push
They're asking
to
for
make
help.
sure.
They're not
Yeah.
being, they're like, look, we got to do this. We need help. So I kudos to them for doing that. I wish there
Hmm.
had been more of that before the presidential election. I think that was kind of a humbling thing. Like, okay, we do need to reach out to these groups. We do need to try to do more on the
Hmm.
ground. I think, unfortunately, that's the way it is. Now, the Georgia Senate races is getting a little bit more oomph because what should have been done during the presidential election wasn't done. So,
So what do you think went wrong there? I mean, because I mean, regardless of the election fraud and all of that, I mean, I'm convinced that the Democrats are cheating. I'm just not convinced that there was enough fraudulent votes to give Biden the victory. But even so, I mean, we knew that in order to avoid this issue, Trump would have to win by enough of a margin to where it didn't matter. So what do you think went wrong with the presidential election?
Yeah, and I think that's important to point out. Although we do believe that there was massive fraud, the reason why there's an opening for that is because the gap wasn't large enough, which is what we should have been fighting against all along. And I had to, here in our office, I kind of had to write, I actually was writing a letter and just trying to piece different things together that we learned throughout the final year of the election. And what we saw was, Trump was doing 3 to 5 rallies a day, 1 to 2 months out from the election. Kaylee was at the podium. She was giving addresses to the press. There was a lot of work going on within the internal team, but I think there was a breakdown on the ground. My boss moved here and registered as a Republican about a year and a half out from the election and was never contacted by the GOP once. Now, when someone moves to a new state and they register, they are a soft R or a soft D, depending on which they register as. And so that means that the local party and the establishment are supposed to reach out to that person and make sure that they have their support, make sure they are brought into the fold, all those different things. Now, he was bombarded by the Democratic Party, even though he's registered as a Republican.
Really?
Emails, calls, letters, um, all these different things. And that's what's unfortunate is that, and I was watching a video of a Republican the other day, and they said, oh, people were so happy that Trump got more of the Black vote, which we believe we can take part of the credit for that. He did receive much more of the Black vote this time, especially the Black male vote. And they were making the point that, but they received less of the white vote, so I guess it doesn't matter, basically. And I get so tired of Republicans view politics as a pie, and the base is 90% of the pie, and you feel, oh, we have to give 90% to this base that is dying off, and we have to give the, and then everyone else gets what's ever left. And Trump was one of the first presidents we had that bucked that and said, no, I want other pieces of the pie. He didn't have that Republican framework of a limited dish.
Right.
The way that Democrats look at politics is we're going to make one overarching message that can reach as many people as possible, whether it's true or not. So Joe Biden, oh, I'm not against fracking. You said no fracking on federal lands when almost all land is federal. It's like this generic message that can make everyone feel good. Everyone can do outreach based on it, but you have the lesser people who are out saying things that are totally different and showing a more aggressive message. But the overarching message is to gain as many people into the fold as possible. And instead, the Republican Party feels, oh, if we just ignite the base, we don't need to worry about anyone else. And it's shown time and time again that that doesn't work, and that there's enough in the pie for everyone if you strategize well, if you spend money well, that everyone can get funds to get the support that you need to win. So that was one of the things that went wrong. There's a small-minded view towards gaining votes and increasing your electoral power that limits the Republican Party. And I think that was one of the main things. We weren't in an election, you're supposed to have a certain amount of touch points to every voter. So that's multiple emails, calls, letters. The most worthwhile touch is in person.
Right.
And so Trump was doing the in-person votes, which is probably why he got 10 million more votes this time than he did last time. Which is unprecedented for an incumbent. But the emails, the letters, the calls, the ads, all these things are just as important in making sure people have touch points and maybe rethink something that they thought about your campaign or learning more about one of your plans. And that wasn't happening. That infrastructure just wasn't there.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like it was a few different factors there. I mean, because I always felt like the people that were around Trump weren't always, you know, handling things the way they should. Trump
Right,
gets in his own way a lot. I'm not going to pretend like he doesn't, but at the same time, even with him getting in his own way, he still
right.
increased his non-white support. And it
And I
was
would say the biggest mistake that he made was the first debate.
I think so too. I think that was a huge
All the other
mistake.
little stuff he said, whatever. But that first debate, not if he had allowed Biden, because Biden was so close to miss speaking, sharing the true points of his agenda on certain
Yep.
things, and Trump stood in the way and took the bullet for him. You know,
Right.
so that was the one thing that I think if he had done differently, it would have things would have ended differently. The rest I blame on infrastructure from the establishment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that dichotomy changes in the next couple of years, which brings me to what I really wanted to talk to you about is the New Journey Political Action Committee.
Mhm.
Talk to us a little bit about what that is.
So New Journey Pack was started by James Golden. He's actually Rush Limbaugh's radio producer. Excuse me. And it was started by the CEO is Autry Pruitt, who was a radio host, who's an entrepreneur, businessman, and is moving more into the political space. And so basically, James is incredibly well connected in the conservative movement, working for Rush.
Hmm.
And he got tired of hearing the excuses as to why Black outreach wasn't happening. He was tired of hearing, oh, the base, the base, the base. Oh, Black people would never vote for us anyway. It's this idea that if we reject them before we reject us, then,
Right.
it's like, it never made sense. And even when outreach was done, it wasn't done in a way that was helpful or respectful or genuine and authentic. And one thing that Black people don't like is when things are inauthentic. And so it just got to the point where James said, you know what, if no one's going to do it, I'm going to do it myself, basically.
Okay.
This needs to be done. This country is changing. Black people lead culture. We don't just lead culture here in America, we lead culture around the world. And so to not have outreach, to not have this going on, and it wasn't always this way. He talks about how where he grew up in, I believe it was in the Bronx in New York, either the Bronx or Brooklyn, I can't remember which, but there was a GOP office where he lived.
Hmm.
And they ended up packing up and leaving later on, but it wasn't always the way that things were now. I think we're so locked into this idea that, oh, Black people just, went with the welfare state. And no,
Free
the
stuff.
the
We just want
GOP,
free stuff.
right, the GOP used to be there and they left. And they left and didn't have any apparatus to build or to connect or to stay within the community. And what do you expect to happen if you do that? So James said, if I'm a conservative, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to do it myself. And he
Hmm.
was connected to my boss, CEO Autry, and he connected me to Autry because he remembered I used to work for Star Parker at Cure. And
Right.
we've just been working, and before the election we hit the ground running. We created um I believe about 50 commercials. I was personally making sure they were planted in battleground states all over the country,
Wow.
on BET, on TV1, trying to create authentic advertising that would just, even if people just said, maybe I should rethink my vote, or maybe I should look into this. That was our hope. So
Hmm.
I'm excited about all that we were able to do in such a short amount of time.
So how long has a pack been around?
It'll be 2 years in March, I think.
2 years. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. What is so? What is the overall objective of
Hmm.
New Journey?
So our goal is, and especially my goals here as well, is twofold. One, the Black vote has more agency when there's competition. And
Mhm.
we saw that this time. We saw Democrats, being a little bit more, doing a little bit more in outreach, a little bit more uh, pandering. Um,
Yep.
there was there was some competition there, and you saw that kind of shifting the way that things were going. But it's still not enough. And in order for the Black vote to have the agency that we need to have a Republican Party that is competing for the votes of Black people, and presenting a platform that is attractive to Black people. So that's one thing, increasing Black voter agency. But our overarching thing is making sure that Black people understand the values of conservatism. It's not, banning welfare. It's not all these other different things that I think the party has become obviously aligned against. We're against this. We're against this. It's we're seeking to kind of help people to understand the basis of conservative ideology and understanding how it would be beneficial to their communities. And so we're also actually going to be starting a 501c3, which will be focusing more on teaching African American voters how to engage civically. If you're
Hmm.
having an issue locally with crime, this is how you engage with your local leadership on this. If you don't like what your school board is teaching your kids, this is how you handle this. So we're also focusing on during this off season in between elections on educating Black voters on how to get the most to use their power locally to benefit their families.
Okay, that makes sense. So when it comes to say politics in general, whether it's Republican or Democrat
Mm-hmm.
politics, obviously you're a conservative group, but
Mm-hmm.
do you focus? Well, you kind of answered part of the question. So, I mean, obviously you do focus on the local level, right? I mean, if
Right.
you talk about the school boards and things like that, do you
Mm-hmm.
also focus on the state and federal level? Do you focus on all three levels, or?
Well, the PAC focuses on federal races, so we're
Mhm.
focused on House, Senate races, presidential races. And if
Okay,
you look and see who we endorsed, you'll see multiple different people from New York to California that we were endorsing and supporting. We supported here in Florida Byron Donalds, who won, Burgess Owens in Utah. So
okay,
our focus is federal as a PAC. We want our 501c3 and our C4 to focus more on local matters because those matter. And now that we're out of the presidential cycle and in between primaries, we can focus more on that and build those things out more. But all of these things matter, and conservatism is all about local government.
yeah.
And
At
that's
least it
the
should be.
biggest thing. We don't talk enough about what we're for and what this means and why this is important and how it will allow Black people to have more power over their day to day lives. And we're not showing that the conservative vision is more attractive than the socialist vision. And that's a major problem. And there's a lot of lack of education as to what socialism even is and why that would be detrimental and why this is so important that we come against this narrative that, oh, if we just do more of, oh, I had someone on Twitter, capitalism is racist and, you know, the police is socialist. And I'm like, dude, you don't even know, this doesn't make any sense. The police, having police, that's not social. So, just there's a lot of education on these political, economic matters that is missing. And we're trying to fill in some of those gaps.
So, now that we're going to be heading into the midterms primary season, are you is your pack planning to get involved in the primary races, is it going to basically wait until after those are decided and then focus
Mhm.
on um, getting Republican candidates elected to Congress, or both?
Well, one thing that we're starting to focus in on is making sure that people who run are trained. I'm thankful that more African Americans, more women are running for office as conservatives, but a lot of them need training. They need to have a better understanding of how to campaign. So we'll be focusing in on that as well as we go into the primaries, making sure that people who are expressing interest have some exposure to training and preparation so that when they do run, they can really make a difference. It's good for, oh, it's great when a Black person runs, but if you don't know how to run and you'll be
Hmm.
unsuccessful, it's not enough. We need to make sure that we're propping up people who are ready for the day in, day out grind of a campaign and know how to raise money and know how to say, hey, I'm fundraising $50,000. This is my vision. Do you agree with it? Campaigning is not glamorous. It's very difficult. It's very stressful on the person and on their family if they have one. So, we're also focusing on training and making sure that there are more minority candidates and that they are well prepared for the federal, local, state stage.
Okay. Okay. Now, how does New Journey select the candidates that it chooses to work with? Like, what
So,
criteria are there?
well, we have a director of policy endorsements. His name is Darren Williams, and he just wants to make sure that candidates are conservative, truly. There started to be a point where you had a lot of people who were popping up as celebrities and,
Right.
oh, they're well known, they're raising so much money. And what he wanted to know is, do you understand why you're running as a Republican? Do you understand what that means? Do you
Hmm.
understand what the Republic is and why we are, why are we a Republic? Why do we do things this way? Why are we so focused on representation? Da da da. So we basically we just want to ensure that they understand the conservative mission and platform and what that looks like. We're not just supporting someone because they're popular or they can raise money or whatever. We want to know that they are going to do the right thing for the people where they live, and that when people will try to introduce things that's harmful, they'll know why based on their positions that this is harmful and this is against what America stands for.
Okay. Okay. So, so when you guys do choose a candidate, like, and you mentioned training and things like that, can you talk to us a little bit about what are the main things that you teach these folks when they work with you?
So as a PAC, we can't directly work with the candidate. So once they're a
Okay.
candidate, we have to take our hands off. You're on your own. Don't talk to us. Go over there. Whatever.
Hmm.
But one thing that we really want to work on, and we're looking at different partners to do this, and we're hoping to have this before the primaries, is just making sure that a candidate is ready and is sure. Now, I would encourage candidates to run locally before they run federally.
Right.
That's a really important step. And I think that's why Byron Donalds won, because he worked in the Florida House and he had connections, he had some groundwork already built up. One of the worst things that I see now is people just, oh, I'm running for office. You weren't on the PTA, you know, you haven't done any sort of politics. You have no experience in this. So
Right.
the biggest thing I would encourage people to do is to run for something local, get some experience in small time politics. And that's what we're working on, teaching people how to work their way up and making sure they're prepared for the larger stage when you get there. Because you're taking people, they're raising money, they're taking people's money into a campaign, and if we endorse you, we want to know that it's money well spent because
Right.
you're ready for the platform.
So you're trying to be more of a resource before they actually start running, and
Right,
then when they finally do run,
right.
obviously, you guys do funding and stuff like that. But so are there other organizations? I mean, you mentioned partnering with some other organizations that can maybe help them when they do become a candidate. Are you already doing that? Or are you hoping? Do you plan on? Well, let me back this up. Do you
Mhm.
plan on starting other organizations that will do that, or are you going to work with organizations that already exist, or both?
Well, once they're a candidate, we will run ads for them. We'll do groundwork for them. So we are doing our own support. We just can't collaborate with them.
I see.
So we're still
Okay.
doing everything we can to promote you and push you and whatever, although we can't do it with you. So I think that's the difference. The training is where we're looking to build up more. and find partners who are training candidates and doing that well, rather than us trying to necessarily open our own training school at this point. It's who's already out there doing this and doing this well and making sure that candidates are ready. So that's where that comes in. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So there were several black candidates who ran at the federal level, some at the local level, like in cities like Baltimore. I talked to a few of them,
Mhm.
um, and they didn't win their races. Although the candidate for mayor, she actually did a lot better than her predecessors. I mean, she actually raised a lot more money.
She did.
Uh, yeah. Oh, so you know Shannon Wright?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. She's great, and so that's a positive sign.
Right.
But what do you think has to happen before people like her can actually get into those positions instead of just making a good showing?
So, you know, when you're running for office, keep in mind, like let's keep in our mind the idea of a district. Your district has specific needs, specific desires, um, that the constituents there want. Byron Donalds, one of the things that he ran on was improving the water um, quality where he is, because that's a
Mhm.
major issue there. So when you see a candidate that's running and none of their issues are localized, I could have packaged that based on what I could Google on your district. What's something that the people are saying, we've been asking a politician for this and we haven't gotten it? Like, I think that some of the platforms that some of these people have is not cutting close enough to what the people there really want. And
Mm.
it's not specific enough to that district. So that's one issue. Politicking is building coalitions also. So, are you able to connect with local politicians? Were you able to build a coalition with different people to help you get out the vote even more? If your campaign is working on its own, it will only get so far.
Mm.
Being
Okay.
well connected, being able to build coalitions, and then being able to connect with the specific needs of whatever district you're in, because there is something that they want in this one pocket of, say, Baltimore, that they won't want the district over. Like, there's
Right.
always something that will hit at the heart that says, I've been speaking to a lot of voters and I've really been digging to try to figure out, what exactly do you need? Do you need more traffic lights on the street? Do you want, more grocery store? Like, what is it specifically in this district that you need? And you have
Hmm.
to make politics very, very local. And so that's what an accomplished politician can do. They're connected to the people there, and it's very local for them. Marion Barry was, as crooked as he was, he's a legend in politics because, and my mom said this, my mom actually grew up near Barry Farms. And if you went to Marion Barry, it didn't matter if you were a homeless man on the street. If you said, I need a job, Marion Barry would say, what's your phone number? And he'd get you a job. Like, this is
Like the
how you do
Godfather.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how you do well
Yeah.
at local politics. When people can come to your office and know that like, you're hearing what they need and your work on that, people don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, if they can have access to you and if they
Mm.
know that you have their back. So we're seeing more of that. We're seeing better politicians. Shannon Wright did a pretty good job running. She should be proud of herself. A friend of mine, Maria Vismail, she did a great job running, connecting with people. We're going to see more of that. She ran in Baltimore too. We're
Okay.
going to see more of that. We're going to see more people saying, I want to run for office, running locally and getting the experience that they need. Most people don't win their first time. That's okay. You're
Right.
building coalitions, you're being taken seriously, you're learning to fundraise. And as you do that, you'll be more likely to succeed the next time.
So here's a question. I want to go back to something you were saying that kind of stood out to me. One of the issues seems to be that if you're, say, a Black candidate running in a city like Baltimore or Chicago, you've
Mm-hmm.
got your own campaign and you're relying on them, but you said that a lot of them aren't building coalitions outside of that to
Right.
to to win. Now,
Right.
is this happening because they just don't know to do it, or is it because they don't have those connections, or they don't know how to form those connections? Well, what's preventing them from allying with those coalitions?
Well, I think just a lot of politicians, there's their first time running and they don't know,
Okay.
so there's a lot of hard work that goes into doing that. And when you're first running, the storybook of how you run for office is start knocking on doors, which is very, very important. Still the most
Sure.
important thing to do. You get some palm cards, but a lot of people don't realize how important coalition building is among politicians that are already there within your local party. Our local parties helping, these politicians who are new, are they helping them build coalitions? Are they helping them get out and meet new donors? So it's both on the candidate and on the local party. Are you all doing enough to making sure that this person is reaching not just the people, which is the most important, but also the power brokers in this area who they probably need to have some sort of relationship with if they're going to be successful if they win. And you do that while you're running.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's kind of what I thought you were going to say. I mean, I have a friend here in Austin who ran for city council, and if you know anything about the city of Austin, it is like hyper blue, very blue. City council dominated by straight out Marxists,
Mm-hmm.
and she is a conservative candidate, and she won, which is huge. I mean, she like
Wow.
something like that isn't supposed to win, but she won. She defeated the incumbent,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, we would check in every now and then throughout her campaign, and she would kind of tell me what she was up to. And she had to do a lot of schmoozing, and she
Yeah.
had to, get endorsements from key groups and
Right.
get herself some more clout. And she had ran before in 2014, so she already had the experience of running.
Right.
And the Travis County GOP was backing her up,
Mm-hmm.
but and she won. And so, but then I'm seeing in areas like Baltimore, some of the people I've talked to, mixed reviews on the local GOP. They said some of them said that at first they weren't really helping, but then later in the race they came around, which that's better late than never, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
In Chicago, not so much. And in Chicago, they don't really get much support at all. So when you
Right.
have a situation where your local or county or state GOP is not involved or
Right.
engaged in winning over certain voters, how do
Right.
you change that? I mean, what do you go around that, or do you change the party itself, or do a little bit of both? I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think is the solution to that problem?
I mean, that's difficult to do. Here in Maryland, Larry Hogan, now his father was in politics. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing you have to keep in mind also. Larry Hogan ended up building his own coalition when he felt like the GOP kind of wasn't doing enough. And he still worked with the GOP. It wasn't an affront to them at all. But he
Right.
really built his own apparatus that he and his campaign controlled to do whatever he didn't feel was being done. And that's really difficult. You have to have a backer that has funds and that believes in your vision enough to support it. And so the first thing that has to happen is you have to be a person with a profound vision for where you are, because that's what, lots of people run, since we keep saying Baltimore, lots of people run and want to do nice things. They see the issues in Baltimore. Oh, we've got, but your vision, how likely is it that you'll be able to bring it to pass? When someone meets you, if I'm a donor and I'm willing to give, $20,000, when I meet you and go through your plans, do you have a plan? And how will you execute this? You've got to be able to win over businessmen and women, different leaders who've been doing politics for a lot of these people are entrenched politicians. They've been
Right.
working with they've been doing all this. So they've seen a lot of new people come and go. So the fact that your friend was able to show them, I'm serious, I mean business, that's really what it takes. You're gaining trust with every single person that you meet that I'm competent, I'm passionate. I'm different. I'm going to do this. What you've wanted these other people to do and they didn't get done, I'm going to get it done. And that's
Hmm.
difficult. It takes a lot of funding, it takes time. You said she ran before. When people run the first time, there's a hesitancy to really give support the first time someone runs.
Right.
Unless you've got business acumen or something like that, some type of experience, unless you're aged, it's very difficult to gain support your first time running. So that's another thing as well. People want to know, are you really serious? Are you really going to be committed to this for the next 2 years? Are you really in this for the right reasons? So
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
difficult, but it's possible. If you have a vision, if you have experience, and you can prove that you can seal the deal when given the chance.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, and while you're talking, I'm comparing it to what I saw her doing,
Mhm.
and she did it. I mean, her name is Mackenzie Kelly, and she's great. And going, she even did what you're talking about when it talks about speaking to the actual issues that people are dealing with. I
Mhm.
mean, here in Austin, our city council and our mayor have really messed up. They repealed an ordinance that banned homeless camping in the city, in the downtown area, and everywhere around. They voted to defund the police. She spoke directly to those issues.
Yeah.
And she said, I will fight to refund the police
Right.
and yada yada yada. Because even people on the left here in Austin are not happy with it. So when there's that much dissatisfaction,
Mhm.
she and her campaign took advantage of that, which is exactly what they should have done, and they did
Right.
what they needed to do. And
Right.
but I think the most important thing is what you said about showing that you're actually serious about what you're talking about here.
Right.
And it seems like a lot of people on our side, I'm not going to name names, but some people were just running for clout or running for to get the attention, and people can
Right.
see that. They can see the authenticity.
Yeah.
They want somebody who's real. They're like, okay, are you worried about getting famous, or do you want to solve the problems that I'm dealing with?
Right.
And if you can communicate to them that you're actually serious about alleviating their stress or their
Mhm.
problems, they're gonna gravitate towards you.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, great. So this has been awesome. Now, last question: is there anything that I didn't bring up or is there anything burning that you want the audience to know?
Well, I think I'm excited about, and this is going to sound crazy coming from a conservative, I'm excited about the next 4 years.
Hmm.
And I think one of the things that has bothered me already, when you see conservatives attacking Jill Biden and not wanting to call her doctor, this is my hope for conservatives the next 4 years. Let's major on the majors.
Hmm.
Okay, now you have an opportunity. Now that there's a clear difference between you and the other side, because there's going to be. You have Joe Biden saying he wants to repeal the Hyde Amendment, things that 10 years ago, Barack Obama would never have even said anything like that, even with all that he did. I'm
Right.
not going to repeal the Hyde Amendment. Stuff like that, that we would never expect to be said by a presidential candidate or a president elect. So we have an opportunity now to brand ourselves as different and to show how our vision differs from the other side rather than attacking on these little tit for tat things. I really, really hope that conservatives take this opportunity to show the importance of small government, the importance of individual rights. These things are so, so important. And now we have an opportunity to do that. We can say, we need to start showing this is how they would handle this. This is the American conservative way of handling this. And this is why it's better. And so I hope that we begin to turn from getting into these silly arguments and focusing more on explaining the principles behind conservatism, on why they're so important and why they're so fundamental and why they should be preferred by people. With COVID-19, this should have been an opportunity for conservatives to say, Joe Biden and the Democratic Party would have nationalized companies. They actually talked about that,
Hmm.
which is scary. They actually talked about taking over private industry by the government taking over industries and saying, we're going to decide who gets PPE. We're going to make deals to do this instead of allowing states to work with the private sector. Today, we have a vaccine within 7 months.
Yes.
Okay. This is an example of why conservatism is different. Allowing the private sector to work on their own vaccine while removing regulations that prevent them from being able to do so quickly. Allowing states to understand and to better figure out what they need on the ground rather than the federal government doing that and dictating that. This is the opportunity that we have. This is why we are different. And the fact that we have a vaccine today is because of conservative principles at work.
Right.
And I hope that we see more of this type of conversation of why we believe what we believe and why it's important and how it benefits people. So I'm excited about this. I'm a very positive person. Clearly, I'm a very positive person.
Yes.
But we have a profound opportunity now to do that. And I hope that for once we take it.
Awesome. Definitely. Well, tell the audience where they can find you, how they can get in touch with you.
I'm on Twitter, AJ Swinson _. And if you want to check out New Journey, you can go to newjourneypac.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. And it was so good to catch up with you.
Yeah, you too. All right, I'm stopping recording.
Okay.